Seth Wickersham, ESPN The Magazine, does this as well as anyone does. Like what he does, he comes into your organization, he gets all the juicy stuff that everybody doesn't know about. He leaves your organization, they yell and deny it, and then he's right about everything. That's usually how that one works.
I think they're going to start not allowing him to come to the organization.
Well,
hey, Wickersham's
it's a good
coming.
question. When Stu got said before, why does anyone agree to allow him into the facility? It's an excellent question. So the Browns, what would you say, Seth, and thank you for joining us, what would you say are the 3 best items in your story?
Hey, thanks, guys. That was very flattering. Look, the thing that interested me, once you saw Baker Mayfield emerge as this force in the NFL, this precocious sort of force, I was like, oh my gosh, like, is he gonna be the latest version of Red Right 88 and the drive and the fumble and the shot? And so I really wanted to try to get inside and learn what it's like to work for Jimmy and Dee Haslam and try to determine as best I could whether, their methodology, the way that they do football, is going to test what a young quarterback can transcend. And so that's what I was interested in learning about. And in the process, I learned about a lot of things. I learned that when, Hugh Jackson was told he was fired, he told John Dorsey and Jimmy Haslam to get the F out of his office. I learned that General Manager Sashi Brown was nicknamed Obama by Jimmy Haslam, which, offended a lot of the people in the building, even though he didn't mean it that way. And, I think there was just a lot there, including, they broadcast porn once in front of by accident in the building.
Yeah, that was a good story. Who gave you that story? Where did it come from? How excited were you when you got that story? Was the feeling inside you as a journalist better than the actual watching of the porn?
Oh, yeah. But, it was an accident. I mean, it could have happened at numerous places, but it was one of those things that just sort of happened to the Browns.
No, it couldn't have. In the history of the sport, that's the only place that could have happened. What are you talking about?
You're probably right. Probably right.
So, Seth, what's it like working for Jimmy Haslam? What'd you discover?
He seems like he's just this is a rich guy's toy, and he's nuts, and he eats hard-boiled eggs in front of people because he's a rich guy and he throws the shells at their face.
I think that when he inherited the family business and turned it into this, massive chain. And then, he bought the team. Everything seemed like it was going okay. And then 6 months after he bought the team, the business was indicted. He was leading a meeting when FBI and IRS officials raided the building. And, I think that changed Jimmy as an owner because he had been a minority owner at the Pittsburgh Steelers, which was all about patience and stability. And as the family business became something that he could no longer, do, and he ended up selling most of the shares, the controlling shares in it, he began to grip the Browns more tightly. And I think that, when businessmen come from outside and they buy a team, I'm not trying to feel sorry for billionaires here, especially ones whose company are under, we're under FBI investigation, but it is hard, and they're not used to the criticism. And I think that it became a perfect storm. And then when you factor in all of the history with Cleveland and the fact that they go negative there faster, that's what I think has led to a bunch of this stuff. Because, he is the type of guy who people think they have his ear and they have his trust and that they will be there for years. And the next thing you know, they are fired. And one of the things I wanted to do in this story was show how he actually fires people. And I have several anecdotes about how those conversations actually go.
So he's Seth Wickersham, and I don't think there's anyone at the company doing this thing better, where he goes into a place and tells you more about what's happening there than a lot of people knew. Can you explain to our audience, for the ignorant like me, what the hell happened for real? Not legal loopholes and rich guys can get around things with that federal indictment. Because I know that when you do a deep dive on these things, you get your research. What the hell happened with Haslam and that indictment? And because that's a weird thing for an owner to trail into that league.
Yeah, it scared people. And, a lot of people are doing time. A lot of people are about to plead guilty. A lot of people have taken immunity deals. And nobody has been able to, show a connection to Jimmy, even though there's been testimony and there's been audio that's come out in these trials that have shown that he did know about this fraud scheme that the company was doing. And so when that happened, people were panicked. And, he had hired Joe Banner to be the CEO of the team, and he had hired all these people. And league executives, other owners, employees were coming to Joe saying, like, what have we done? Is this a huge mistake? And Joe vouched for Jimmy. And then, less than a year later, Jimmy shows up and he asks Joe to go to dinner. And then he asks if they can meet at his office before dinner. So they sit there and they chit-chat about free agency. And Jimmy says, you've built such a strong team here, just like you said you would. And, Joe thought it was a very nice compliment. And Jimmy said, you built such a strong team that I'm going to let you go. And that's how it happened.
There's the legend of Jimmy Haslam talking to a homeless person and that homeless person convincing him to draft Johnny Manziel. However, in reading your story, I found out that it probably had more to do with a handshake. Can you get into that?
Well, the Browns were going to pick a quarterback that year, and Johnny was one of the guys that some of the people were high on, and he obviously fell. And this was Ray Farmer. He's 39 years old, running his very first draft. He got promoted after Jimmy fired Joe Banner. And so his very first pick of the draft, he gives it basically to the head coach, Mike Pettin, to pick a cornerback. So then they're sitting back, letting the draft unfold, and, we all remember Johnny kept slipping. And, Jimmy was very hot on Johnny Manziel. And I think Ray Farmer, Haslam did not order Ray Farmer to pick him, but I think Ray Farmer felt like he had to do what the owner wanted, so he traded up and he picked Manziel. And, then he's looking at this saying, according to people I talked to, he said, look, this is my first draft. This stuff defines your career, and I've given away the first two picks to the head coach and the owner. I have to, take control of this thing. And right then, the Houston Texans called offering a high second-rounder for Brian Hoyer, who was the Browns starter at the time. And Ray was so frustrated with how things are going, he just turned it down without even considering it. And obviously, those high second-round picks are gold because you have a chance to get a first-round player for second-round money. And so I think a lot of people felt like it was a quintessentially dysfunctional Browns draft where you had, team management on different pages, nobody exactly sure what's going on, and Jimmy had invited all these guests and other businessmen inside to watch it. So all of it was unfolding under essentially a live audience.
Wait, so no homeless guy? Because I love that story.
No, that's true. That's
okay.
true. But I don't think that, look, and he relayed that. I think that story got, it took on a little bit of a life of its own. But Jimmy, yes, that did happen. Yeah.
But he wanted Manziel over Teddy Bridgewater primarily because of a handshake that didn't sit well with him that he had with Teddy Bridgewater?
Yeah, so the team had soured on Bridgewater after his workout. So everybody thought he was a second-rounder, but they liked him in the second round. And one of the things that the owner had said was he didn't like his handshake. And so, the team wanted to pick Teddy, but I think they were thinking about him as a second rounder, not as a first rounder. And then when it was obvious that Johnny was going to be the pick, that's what they did.
I know that you're not someone you report, and you report facts, and you report well, and you tend to be objective. You're not sitting here trying to give opinions on things. But tell me if I have this generally right. Dorsey's good at his job, and Haslam's a clown show.
Well, I don't know. I would never. I think that, again, nobody knows what's going to happen. I mean, the number one prerequisite to be a great owner in the NFL is to have a franchise quarterback, bar none. That's the prerequisite, and most owners kind of know that. And so the question going forward will be, do they actually have the patience to let Baker Mayfield become a superstar in this league and surround him with continuity? And then do they also have the discipline to not fall in love with Baker, make him bigger than the team, and almost ruin him that way? And I think that that's going to be the fascinating thing for me going forward. And that's an organizational thing. But obviously we've seen with certain teams, the Washington Redskins with RG3, that's one of them, owners can fall hard for their quarterbacks, and it can create a lot of problems in the team.
We are out of time, but do you have any good Manziel stories that you couldn't put in your story because it's not journalistically sound, but the radio is a playpen and the sewage, so you could do it here. But this was not good enough to make print. We don't even know if it's true. But the story that Wickersham heard about Manziel was?
No, I don't have any Johnny stories for you, man. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thank you, Seth. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, gentlemen.
It is a really good story. You should read it.